and welcome to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton, and welcome back to the Toffee Blues Podcast. Max isn't able to make it today. I can assure you he's not out on the piss, but to be fair, he's probably one of the few Evertonians not out celebrating tonight. To be fair, which I'm sure we'll get into. But for this podcast, we're joined by Cal. How you doing, Cal?
Yeah, I'm doing well, Matt. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. It's been a very big day, a very good day. It's got to be said. To be an Evertonian, of course, with the big breaking news that the Friedkin takeover has finally been completed after weeks of speculation, and the whole ownership saga has been going on for, I don't know, almost 2 years now. It's been a long time since Mashiri announced he was going to be selling up, and the day we've been waiting for ever since then has finally arrived. So yeah, what was your immediate reaction to the news this morning?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was relief for a lot of it. I think a lot of it was just finally this is over. I think this has been a formality now for about probably 2 or 3 months. It was just one of those things where similar to other clubs, like you look at like Newcastle's their ownership situation a bit more uh, interesting than ours to say the least. But these things always take a while to come through. It was always expected, and now it's just to see that it's actually gone through and that they haven't pulled out last second again or bloody someone hasn't bloody kidnapped Friedkin the day it was meant to happen or something with just our luck as fans. But yeah, really optimistic about the future, especially with what's come out from Dan Friedkin, and I believe it was the new chairman also put out a quote. It's the usual what you'd expect. It's the typical thing they're going to say, but it's exciting to see that, and hopefully a new era for Everton moving forward. But I think an era we'll mainly see more in the summer.
Yeah, I agree, and like you say, I think with the 777 thing when that was going on, it was pretty much any sort of press speculation about them was almost always very negative and very worrying. Um, Whereas I think the whole time with the Friedkins, it's all been plain sailing really, and I think the news articles that have been coming out today, like giving the first insights into what Evertonians can hope to expect under this new regime look very, very positive. And obviously we've all been somewhat aware of just how much the club have been struggling financially over the last few years, and already the initial signs seem to be that the Friedkins have already provided the solutions to almost all these problems now, and it looks like we're finally like not really looking over our shoulder anymore and can actually finally look ahead to the future and try and pull this club away from the mess that it's been in the last few years that has obviously spilled out over onto the pitch and resulted in all these relegation battles. So yeah, as you say, with it being mid-season and uh, um, PSR and all sorts of things, it's probably not going to like all happen overnight, but I think it seems to be that once we get into the summer, provided obviously nothing goes catastrophically wrong for the remainder of the season and we remain a Premier League club, but we get into this new stadium and then all of a sudden it's all about looking upwards and hopefully we can start to compete again and look upwards on the table. So yeah, as you say, I'd say it's a very exciting time, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. I think it's one of those where I expect a lot of changes, and like I said, I think a lot of fans need to expect a lot of those changes at the end of the season. I feel like the club has a plan in place. I feel like the Friedkins have a plan in place, and they're going to have to, you don't buy a Premier League team with the intention of finishing 16th every year, especially with a new stadium coming in. There's going to be a real ambition to push up the table, but I do think that, this is one of those nice, brief, positive moments being an Everton fan. We don't get many, but I think it's a lot of the focus is going to be get to the end of the season, stay up. I don't think the place is going to matter. The higher we finish, the more money we get, which is always nice. But it's going to be just stay up, and then yeah, we'll move from there. Really, I think that's what it is. I think the expectations are the same as what they would have been if Mashiri would have stayed. To be honest, right now until the end of the season.
Yeah, and obviously, I think there's probably quite a bit in the fan base that are hoping that, the Freightons will come in and it will immediately, Deitch will be out the door and Fell about be out the door and it'll be just an immediate fresh start. And yeah, I think as you say, the sensible thing would surely be to just stick with what we've got for now. Should be enough to stay up in the Premier League, you'd like to think. And then start the rebuild in the summer. I don't think anyone would expect to be Deitch to be here again like next season. With his
No.
contract expiring in the summer. I think it's almost a foregone conclusion that we will at least have a new manager next season. But I do honestly think he's done enough in his time now to earn the remainder of this season to keep the club afloat once again, which was obviously the objective he came into the club in the first place with, and then yeah, and go on his way. But obviously a bit of a more difficult question is probably what happens with Kevin Felwell. I think there's probably a bit more of a topic up for debate really about his time as director of football. He's obviously, as we say, he's kind of had his hands tied behind his back really for most of his time here. Not really been allowed to perhaps bring in the ideal sort like profile of players that he probably would have liked, obviously due to the financial situation. But yeah, I think I'm right in saying his contract expiring in the summer too. So would you be expecting a change there, or do you think he'll be given a new deal and a chance to prove himself with hopefully a bit more money to play with?
I think I read something that they intended keeping him on, so I
Mm.
think I think that's a positive sign. I don't think he's bad. I think you look at his time at Wolves, good signings all along the board, and that's excluding, sorry, the Jorge Mendes signings as well. There was a lot of good signings without that era. Yeah, I think he's clearly pretty decent at his job. You don't stay around in the Premier League as a director of football for that long if you're not. I'm not saying he's bad, but look at how quickly Man United sacked off Dan Ashworth. So I think it's one of those where he clearly must know what he's doing. He's been given barely any money, and you look at a lot of the signings we have made under him. When did he join? 2, 3 years ago now.
2022, I think it was early 22, so
So
after Brands went.
just after Rafa.
Yeah.
Yeah. So looking at the players, I mean, can you think of a relatively bad signing we've made over the past 2 years? I'm just,
I mean, people
you
point
know,
to more pay, but
no,
I think a lot of it is just you've got to get someone through the door. We need the
yeah,
numbers,
yeah.
and
I think
obviously,
it's one of those things. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
like
numbers like you said, more pay. Yeah, I think he's shown at other clubs that it's just a thing where he's okay, not very good, but he's okay. And I think we've made a majority of the money back on him anyway now with his
yeah,
Marseille deal.
I think so. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, so I think it's one of those where I think I think he does gets away with it a little bit because of stuff like that. On you look at a few of the bad signings, being able to recoup some of the money with them. You look at some of the sales that have gone under him. Getting good money for Onana. And getting replacing. I think replacing really well. I think Mangala's done a really good job at um stepping into Onana's role, not really as well, but as that sort of more progressive midfielder. And you look at, I mean, it's unfortunate that we're probably going to take advantage of another club's peril in Leon, but again, it's a bit of luck on his side. We're going to go from playing probably 25, 30 for what they want to possibly half that, even less, depending on if they do get that enforced relegation to League Two. So, and I think Ashley Young, you could have said bad signing. It's probably starting to turn that around a little bit in the fan base perspective now. I'm trying to think of other people we've signed, to be honest with you. Broyers look like a really good loan so far. Beto's one. I think Beto's probably the main one where
Mm,
you'd say it's a bad signing, but again, that's one where, for example, if we get rid of him for 20 million euros in January, which is rumored, Torino were willing to pay before we said we're not shelling him off. Um, Again, it's all about he seems to be quite good in negotiation when it comes to getting rid of players. Is
mm,
one thing I'll give him the praise for, and I do think even though we're moving into a new stadium, I'm going to be brutally honest with a lot of fans. Still, probably expect to lose someone like Bramford in the summer to a Manchester City.
mm,
I could see Manchester City looking at him as a John Stones replacement and being willing to give us the 80 million. But it depends on how much money he's given to spend. I think he deserves a chance.
mm.
I think. You look at the main guy they were rumored to replace him with, that Paratici. The main thing I see about him is that they do say he's good in the transfer window, but when it comes to other operations of being a director of football, he's not very good at it. So again, I don't see the point not giving Felwell a chance, saying, here you go, it's 2 years where we've got nothing to spend really. And then as soon as we have something to spend, to go, sorry, mate, moving on. I think he deserves a chance, and I think it's going to be a sink or swim for a lot of people involved. I do think you've seen how they operate at Roma. They're very cutthroat when they need to be, to their own detriment at times. I do think that maybe ran differently at Everton because you have to be a lot more careful in the Premier League. Um, like Roma are never going to get relegated into Serie A just due to the quality of the bottom of the league compared to the top. In the Premier League, it's much more congested, less congested more so these past few years. But one bad summer and a bad start to the season, and all of a sudden, you're looking at a team worth hundreds of millions of pounds, Wolves, for an example, Crystal Palace, us, all of a sudden being in a potential of playing in the Championship next season. So I think they should give him a chance. I think, and I do think it's one of those where realistically, even next season, the highest excitement should be going is like maybe a squeak into the Conference League. Realistically, we should be expecting between like 9th and 13th, just that area of the league. Really comfortable. Top half would be nice. But again, I personally am not going in with massive expectations unless the Friedkins can pull off the most mental managerial hire you've ever seen, and they can bring Lukaku back for no or something stupid like that. And they are actually just wizards in the transfer market. But I think it's one where you want to build a club, you want to build something like, you look at Brighton and Brentford may have a bit more money than them, but you look at what they've built. You can't build anything if you keep throwing away the important people as soon as they mess up.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I think it was kind of a mistake that Bashiri made when he first came in. Just kind of chucking money at anything with no real plan. And I think that's probably what most Evertonians would just say they want, really, just a bit more of a structure and a bit of a clearer idea about who's doing what and things like that. There's been so many reports about people clashing heads, and there's no real like alignment of what the club's trying to do, and that's just inevitably going to lead to problems. And we saw it. We've had so many managers come in and having to manage players they don't really want, but have been brought in under different regimes because there's just no like consistency to anything. So that's definitely something that I think needs to be explored. And as you say, it's something that Brighton and Brentford have and works really well for them. There's a very clear plan and philosophy there, which has got both of those teams punching above their weight really for clubs of their size and stature. We've got that history behind us. And we've got that factor, just with a coherent plan, and who knows whereabouts we could be pushing. You look at Aston Villa in the last few years, and just how quickly their rise has been after returning from the Championship, getting some money behind them from the Grealish deal, and suddenly into the Champions League again. So
Yeah.
it definitely can be done with the right regime. Speaking of Mashiri, I guess there's a bit of a time for reflection as well. I guess. There's already, I think, a tiny bit of revisionism starting to come in a bit about, obviously the whole idea of him coming in was to get us a new stadium, which no one can say he hasn't delivered. Um, but obviously, um, pretty much in every other aspect of things, it's not been the most glamorous of regimes, has it? So, yeah, just a few words really on the reign of Fahd Mashiri, I guess.
Uh, I think the stadium propped him up a lot, a lot. I don't think it was a good footballing wise. It was absolutely horrendous, and even business wise, you have to think about the amount of money that the stadium's going to have to rake in to get rid of his debts. Um, I don't think it's helped of the whole Russia Ukraine and Usmanov thing. That's out of his control, kind of. I understand, he shouldn't really be relying on funds from someone else to run a football club, but at the same time, that's something out of his control, So I can give him a bit, but I think footballing wise, you have a man who was cared too much about the glamour of football in a sense. Um, he wanted the big name players on the big contracts, and now we're paying for it. You know, you look at a, I don't want to do this, but you look at a striker like Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who I believe has something came out that he's one of the worst finishers in Europe over the past few years, asking for 120 grand a week, which is, it's not his fault. When you look at the nicest way to describe it is the mug who was in charge. I'd have done the same thing, yeah. Because at the end of the day, he fell for that time and time and time again. And there were a few of them where he got very lucky. You look at someone like Alex Iwobi, he got very lucky that to Frank Lampard's credit, he was able to find a renaissance for him and help revive his career. And you're seeing that now at Fulham. But yeah, I think you look at a lot of the stuff. You look at not giving managers a chance. You look in hindsight. If brutally honest, probably should have never sacked Marco Silva. You look at the position we're in at the time and the position we ended up being. Probably should have sacked him because the Ancelotti stuff came in, but then Ancelotti left for Madrid and stuff like that. So it's one of those where I don't think we were helped by COVID either. But it's one of those. It's a bad reign overall. It's a bad reign summed up by some of the worst transfer business you'll ever see. Um, paying 45 million for a mid-table attacking midfielder who was pretty good, but never worth 45 million. Trying to think of other ones. Who did we spend real big money on? Davy Klaassen, and then
Dead.
signing 17 number 10s that summer,
Yeah.
and him never getting a chance. Nikola Vlasic, same thing, never really got a chance, and just proven to be a pretty good player abroad. Same with Davy Klaassen at times, to be honest. Not amazing, but clearly better than what our club made them out to be. And then it's just you look at a lot of the players that did perform, they were cheap, relative. The only big transfer I can say that performed well were probably that I can think of Onana and Richarlison that we've spent real money on because I don't think we even paid that much for Digne in a footballing context nowadays. I think we paid more for Mikalenko, so I can't call Digne expensive. But yeah, I can't Pickford as well. I guess
Mm.
at the time it was expensive, but there's very minimal success stories, and I think if you look at a lot of the success stories, they're on the cheaper end of our spending habits, especially But it's summed up by just a lack of patience and a lack of an idea how to run a football club really. And I think people are going to want to be revisionist about it all. Especially if we go into the next season and let's say we finish sixth somehow. Or there'll be some idiot out there who goes, "Oh, if it weren't for Mashiri getting us this new stadium and getting us more money, and we'd have never." No, he was a terrible owner, and this is now the end of a terrible, terrible time. Which he's very lucky that someone else has come in and helped to pay to finish the stadium, or else he would have been doomed. Because let's not forget that the only reason the stadium got finished was because of a bunch of loans and someone then coming in at the end and being like, "Yeah, I'll buy the club."
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, pretty pretty resounding answer there, I'd say. But yeah, obviously, there's still football to be played. We've been so distracted by off the field stuff over the last few years. I guess now, at least till the end of the season, we can finally maybe just focus on the football for a little bit. And obviously, there'll still be a lot of people unhappy with the manager in charge for if indeed he is going to be given the rest of the season. But yeah, I think if results improve even somewhat, and the relegation battle eases for us, then yeah, it should hopefully be a bit more of a pleasant season, to be honest, rather than all the stress and anxiety we've had over the last few. But yeah, obviously, going through uh, the on the field stuff. Obviously, a very good result, I'd say, last Saturday, with grounding out that 0-0 draw away at Arsenal. Um, I think for me that the tide has almost seems to have. I don't obviously I'm maybe speaking a bit too soon after just two matches, but the tide does seem to have turned a tiny bit for me. It almost seems to have happened quite a few times in Dyche's reset, in Dyche's reign, where we kind of just have a bit of a reset after a really bad result, and it seems to me that after we got thumped by United, just 3 days later to produce that same scoreline as a win over Wolves, and then to go to Arsenal, and get that draw. Obviously, avoiding any potential humiliation in the derby, which almost certainly would have derailed things. It does almost seem to me that everything's just kind of been reset a little bit, and it's a bit like, right, clean slate. It's not been good enough the last few weeks. Let's just go again. And I'd say it's been two very solid performances and two very good results. And with the boost we've got this week going into Sunday, the Chelsea's record at Goodison Park is extraordinarily bad. You wouldn't. It's crazy to think, but I think it's only like what, maybe 2 or 3 wins in the last 10 years there, like something like crazy like that. They really don't enjoy coming to Goodison, and it could very well be a very. You'd like to think it'll be almost an electric atmosphere on Sunday, given today's news. Um, and getting a result against them, flying at second in the league, and suddenly things are starting to look a lot more positive than they were a few weeks ago. So, yeah, what are your feelings going into this game on Sunday?
Uh, not too confident. I think one thing I will have to say is I think we were the Arsenal game was good, but I think a lot of it was more Arsenal's misfortune than our performance. Besides the defenders, the centre back specifically, um, all the praise in the world to Pickford and the centre back still. Ashley Young too, again, 39-year-old performing like that. Mikolenko, I've seen some people's sites say he didn't play that well, played all right. Some people say he didn't. I thought he was terrible. I think he was still getting skinned every time Saka went near him, which I get, but you've still got to be able to hold your own against these players, even if it's just, stop it. I think he got very lucky in the fact that Saka's crossing was just not on that day. There was a few times where Saka had wide open crosses, plenty of space to play it in, and it was sailing. I think we got very lucky with that, but you have to play with the cards you dealt, and which is why a lot of the team that did play still deserve praise. I think Adai was pretty good when he got on the ball. He was able to actually drag us forward. The centre backs at Pickford were fantastic. I think Broja has probably now cemented himself as a starter in a lot of Everton fans' eyes for just his ability to keep the ball and even drive with it when you have these moments in our team where there's no one else up to support the striker. I look at it where Broja goes down the left wing and he's able to get past 4 or 5 Arsenal players, then hold it, and he's still able to hold it off 3 or 4 of them. And I think we win a throw in or something like that. Or, he goes to play a pass and it's just there's no one there to support him. But I think it's weird because I think, a tiny bit more quality on the wing, and I think we beat Arsenal, to be honest. So I honestly do think it's as simple as one player for us changes the result. And that's if you swap Jack Harrison for a winger who can cross in the nicest way possible. I think it's a very positive sign that I'm saying one change and suddenly everything changes. So yeah, I think my only thing with Chelsea is a lot of the Chelsea teams you've seen over the past 10 years or so are weirdly like they can't hack pressure in some environments. You look at late Mourinho Chelsea, you look at even Conte Chelsea at times were just really weirdly against it with the pressure, even though they won 30 games that season. And then you look at it ever since Conte left and Sarri and everything after that. Chelsea have never really been a team to, take something by the scruff of the neck. I think they've been a team that if they take the lead, they're able to hold on to it. But when there is real pressure on them, they've struggled. And I think they've also got unfortunate that a lot of I think a few of the times we've played them, that it happens to be a new manager bounce. I think Duncan Ferguson did it twice to them in the span of 3 years. Got a draw and then a win, or a win then a draw. I think it was. I think Chelsea get unlucky by the fact that we always seem to play them at this time of the year, and usually at this time of the year we've got a different manager. So I think it's one of those. But I just think there's something different about this Chelsea team. And the weird thing I think is I think Everton fans are going to be mixed in this. I think we could get pumped 3 or 4-0, and a lot of Everton fans they'd care about the performance, but they'd also look at it and go, "Oh, it's not that bad." A bad result for Liverpool, a win for Chelsea. All of a sudden, Chelsea are then they're at the door. I think they are now, and I think Chelsea are the only if they can keep this up, maybe bring in a more solid defensive player in January, which is mental to say with the amount of transfers they've made, but could really challenge Liverpool for the league. So I think it's one of those games where it's difficult, but I do think we can challenge them. I think we can really challenge Chelsea on set pieces. We can really make them struggle if we make the game physical. Of course, Borough can't play. Um, I can't imagine. But with Chelsea's negotiations, it also wouldn't surprise me if they've somehow forgot to leave the thing where he can play against his old club. But yeah, I think it's one of those where we need a big game from we need a big game from one of the strikers. If I'm going to be completely honest, Calvert-Lewin or Beto, it's going to be Calvert-Lewin. Really needs to step it up. Really, really needs to step it up because if he doesn't, I think Bro should be starting. To be honest, because I think there's only so many bad games you can have in a row from a Calvert-Lewin perspective, and I do understand that he doesn't get the best chances delivered to him, and McNeil's form fell off a little bit. Jack Harrison's been horrendous, and Dye's been pretty good, but it's one of those where it's hard to really judge him when you look at what's around him, but you also look at the chances he has got in front of goal, which is not good enough. And I think it's one of those where I think we can catch Chelsea. And I think if we are able to catch Chelsea and win or even get a draw, um, all of a sudden the tide of the atmosphere has changed because I did the monthly review with Connor and I said there's a very realistic chance Everton don't win a game in December. A very realistic chance of it happening. Or to start December with, yeah, we did play Wolves in December, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
To start with, win, draw, draw, or win, draw, win. All of a sudden, then losing to Man City isn't the end of the world, and I think that's why. But yeah, I think it's going to be one where I do think the performance is going to have to be there because this exact Chelsea team has shown what they can do to us when the performance isn't there. Cole Palmer specifically shown what he can do to us when the performance isn't there. So I do think they are going to use that as motivation for hopefully a better performance.
Mm. Can we get a score prediction? What are we thinking?
Uh, mm, so I'm going to say 2-1 Chelsea in the hopes that I've jinxed Chelsea there.
Fair enough. Yeah, like I said, Chelsea are such a weird one, aren't they? Like, there's still a part of me that it's just I'm like I said, I was really unconvinced by this manager. And so far he's really proved me wrong. I'm pretty surprised just how well they've done this season. I really thought he wouldn't be able to hack a job of this size so early on in his career. And with the kind of basket case of a club that Chelsea have been over the last few years, I just thought it'd be too much for pretty much anybody. I thought like getting rid of an experienced head like Pochettino for someone like Maresca was just insanity to me. But they've looked excellent this season, really, really good. And as you say, there is a very realistic possibility they come to Goodison on Sunday and just pump us. But I'm, I don't know. I do genuinely think that it's just one of these games where, if Goodison gets on top of them, which is something that's talked about a lot, and sometimes it just never really materializes. But when Goodison's on it, like you can just tell that teams like really struggle to play there. And it's still quite a young, youthful Chelsea team with not too much experience to them. And we caught them up last season during the really good spell we had, where we won like 3 or 4 games in a row after we got the points deduction, and we were just too much for them to handle that day as well. And so with this week's news, it is almost either going to go one way for me in that um, we just overwhelm them and get a really good win over them yet again, or as you say, they just are too much for us in the day and outclass us. So I'm going to be optimistic and go with the former and hope that we can maybe get a 1-0 or 2-0 win over Chelsea and get a really another, as you say, really positive result going into Christmas and going into a daunting trip to the Etihad with whatever form Manchester City are in is always going to be a difficult match. So yeah, like I say, it's definitely an optimistic feeling around the club, I'd say at the moment, and yeah, like I say, definitely an early Christmas present for us. So Yeah, I think that pretty much just wraps it all up. So thank you very much for joining me, Cal.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, and yeah, please leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Comment below, giving your thoughts. Are you excited about the Friedkin deal? I'm sure most people are. And what are you thinking ahead of the Chelsea match on Sunday? Subscribe to the Toffee Blues channel for more Everton content, and we will see you in the next video. Up the Toffees.